By the summer of 2025, Oscar Piastri was unstoppable. He was leading the World Championship, and honestly, he was making it look boring. He was the calm assassin, the Iceman, the guy who was going to be champion. And then, it all fell apart with the grace of a giraffe on a slip and slide. So, what the hell went wrong? This isn't a simple story of a driver choking under pressure. It's more complicated than that. It's a story about three things: a single mental blow, a crazy number of mistakes, and his biggest rival suddenly becoming a superhero. Together, these things created a perfect storm that cost him the championship. To understand why he fell apart, you first have to understand why everyone thought he was a superhero. Because before he was the king of 2025, Oscar Piastri was already a freak of nature, something the sport had never seen before. Most drivers who make it to F1 have good junior careers. They win some races, maybe a championship, but Oscar didn't just win, he conquered. He did something so ridiculous that it still breaks my brain. He won the Triple Crown. Let's break that down. In 2019, he won Formula Renault. Okay, cool. The next year, 2020, he jumps into Formula 3, which is basically a Shark Tank where young drivers try to tear each other apart, and he won the championship as a rookie. The year after that, 2021, he moves up to Formula 2, the last step before F1, and wins that too, again as a rookie. 3 different series, 3 championships, 3 years in a row. Nobody in history had ever done that. Not Max Verstappen, not Charles Leclerc, not even Lewis Hamilton. Those guys were all legends in the junior series, but none of them were that good, that consistently. It was a clear signal that this wasn't just another talented kid. This was a Terminator, a robot sent from the future to do one thing: collect trophies. This is why the hype was so real. He was a living legend before he even sat in an F1 car. And that's what makes his 2025 season so crazy to watch. If his junior career was the trailer, the first half of the 2025 season was the main movie. And let's be real, it wasn't just a rise. Nope, it was a demolition. While other drivers were fighting their cars and making mistakes, Oscar Piastri was driving with the cold, dead eyes of a Terminator. The stats were just crazy. By the summer break, he was on the podium in 12 of the 14 races. He was on fire, winning 4 of the first 6 races and building a big lead in the championship. And he was doing it in the quietest, most boring way possible. He'd get pole position, have a clean start, and just disappear. He'd be so far ahead that you'd forget he was even in the race until he was crossing the finish line. His calm style under pressure had everyone calling him the new Iceman. It just seemed like nothing could rattle this guy. And all of this was happening while his own teammate, McLaren's golden boy Lando Norris, was having a total nightmare. While Oscar was collecting trophies, Lando's season was falling apart like a cheap IKEA cabinet. A perfect example was the race in Bahrain. Oscar won everything: pole, fastest lap, and the race. And Lando? He was way down the order, spinning under pressure and barely scored any points. It was a huge difference that set the story for the whole first half of the season. Piastri was a flawless point-scoring robot, and Lando was a sentient bottling machine. Whenever Oscar got the lead, he seemed like the safest driver in the world. From the second race all the way to the 16th race of the season, he only missed the podium 1 time. He had more wins and more points than anyone. His championship win felt like it was guaranteed. I mean, I even made a video saying he was about to break F1. That's how good he was. If you want to find the exact moment Oscar Piastri was at the top of the world, look no further than the Dutch Grand Prix, Zandvoort, Max Verstappen's home turf, the Sea of Orange. This was supposed to be a Red Bull stronghold, but it wasn't. It was Oscar Piastri's playground. He beat Lando Norris to get pole position, and on Sunday he put on a masterclass. He had to deal with 3 different safety car restarts where everything could have gone wrong, but he didn't flinch. He led every single lap of the race. And the best part was he got to watch in his mirrors as his biggest rivals just imploded. It was like they were driving on banana peels while he was on rails. This was the perfect before picture, the highest point before his big fall. Standing on top of the podium, he wasn't just leading the championship, he owned it. He was the king of the world, and it felt like nothing could stop him. The only question left was how soon he'd win it all. But in Formula 1, the moment you think you're unstoppable is the exact moment the sport decides to humble you, and Oscar Piastri's humbling was about to begin. But it wouldn't be his fault. No, the first crack in his armor would come from his own team. To find where the season started to go wrong, you have to look at a race where he actually finished on the podium. Round 16. Monza, the Temple of Speed. This was the site of a psychological hit job delivered by his own team. Here's what happened. Lando was faster than Oscar all weekend. He was ahead for most of the race. But then McLaren had a slow pit stop, a classic mistake that messed everything up for Lando. When it was all over, Oscar was in front of him. But then came the call, that gut-wrenching, soul-crushing call over the radio. McLaren told Oscar to move over and let Lando pass. And he did it, without a fight. People argued for weeks. Was it right? Was it wrong? But to understand why it mattered so much, you have to know that this kind of thing has a history in F1. This was a classic multi-21 moment. It was Ferrari at Austria in 2002 all over again. This was a team showing everyone who their favorite driver was. Think about it. You're leading the World Championship. You've been the team's best driver all year, and they still treat you like the number 2 guy, telling you to move over for the teammate you're beating. It was like your parents telling you to give your best birthday present to your brother just because. It wasn't about the points he lost. It was about the mental blow. The message was clear. No matter how well you do, you're still not our guy. That weekend, something inside the silent assassin broke. That call from Monza was clearly in his head at the next race. He admitted he wasn't driving his best, and having that doubt creep in is the last thing you need when you're heading to a track like Baku, a concrete jungle where the walls are closer than a creepy guy on the subway and punish mistakes with the subtlety of a sledgehammer to the kneecaps. And punish him it did. This was the result of the mental damage from Monza. His famous calmness was gone. He even said it was his worst weekend in racing. And honestly, I won't argue with him. It was a total train wreck. Let's do a play-by-play of the disaster. The problem started right away. He had engine troubles in practice, which meant he lost a lot of time. Trying to make up for it, he started pushing too hard and making mistakes. He was even getting penalties in practice, which is almost impossible to do. I'm not kidding. This man was collecting penalties like they were Pokemon cards. Then came qualifying. He was pushing, trying to find that half a tenth that separates the front from the midfield, and he pushed too hard. He clips the wall in Q3, and just like that, his qualifying is over. He's forced to start the race from 9th. The race was even worse. At the start, you could tell his nerves were clearly shot. He moved before the lights went out, which meant he was going to get a penalty for a false start, but he never even got the chance to serve it. A few laps in, trying to make up for his mistake, he goes for a move, gets it wrong, and has a clumsy off at turn 5. Game over. He was out of the race and had to do the long walk of shame back to the pits, probably wishing a sinkhole would open up and swallow him whole. What made it so sad was that just 2 weeks before, he was the most solid driver on the grid. Everyone thought this was just a one-time mistake, a bump in the road. He thought so too, but it wasn't. It was the beginning of his fall. If Baku was the implosion, the next few races were the chaotic downward spiral. This was no longer a one-time mistake. This was a pattern, a full-blown crisis of confidence. First, Singapore, a race he should have won. He qualified ahead of Lando, but at the start, Lando saw his only chance. He pushed his way past on the inside, and that was that. Oscar complained on the radio, but the team, still feeling the heat from Monza, declined to perform the switcheroo. The lesson was clear. When you're fighting your own teammate for a title, don't expect any favors. Then came Austin. In the sprint, clearly still thinking about Singapore, Oscar tried to make a risky switchback move of his own on Lando at the first corner. It was like a revenge move you'd try in a video game, but this was real life, and he was punished for it. He got sent spinning, and to make it even worse, he took out his own teammate. It was a total disaster. The main race wasn't much better. He was slow, and the gap to Lando was getting bigger. And then came Mexico. This was the moment he lost the championship lead. Oscar was like a ghost. He finished in 5th, a full 42 seconds behind Lando, who won the race and took the lead in the championship. And just like that, after leading for 15 weekends in a row, the king had been dethroned. Not by another team, but by his own collapse. At this point, the entire F1 internet was on fire. The fan theories were getting crazier and more unhinged by the day. Was it an internal conspiracy? Was McLaren railroading their Australian driver in favor of their golden child? Had the recent upgrades been designed only for Lando's side of the garage? I mean, I saw one theory that Zach Brown, the team principal, was hypnotizing Oscar before each race. It's all very fun to think about, but it's not the truth. The cold, hard truth was in the data. And trust me, I'm just a clown on the internet with cave paintings, but the numbers and the telemetry don't lie. Looking at their laps from that time, Lando was just driving better. He was braking later, carrying more speed through the corners, and using every inch of the track. In the first 3 corners at Mexico alone, he had gained 3/10 over Oscar. He was faster, way faster. And Oscar even said it himself. He said that after some small car updates, he had to drive very differently and was struggling to get used to it. So even if there was some grand conspiracy, if you want to win a championship, you have to adapt. And Oscar knew that. But the real brutal truth of his collapse wasn't just his own lack of confidence or his problems with the car. It was happening at the exact same time that something had changed on the other side of the garage. The story isn't just Oscar choked. The story is Oscar choked while Lando suddenly became a god. And that's the part of the story that would deliver the final blow. Everyone was talking about Lando Norris's problems in the first half of the season. I mean, I even made a whole video saying he was throwing away the championship again. He was making simple mistakes, he seemed fragile, and his brain was turning to scrambled eggs under pressure. If he saw a gravel trap, he'd find a way to park his car in it. But somewhere along the line, as Oscar's perfect season started to crack, Lando changed. He stopped making mistakes. He started driving better. He wasn't just fast anymore, he was unstoppable. It was like he had exercised his own demons. The pressure of being the underdog, the one chasing from behind, had freed him. He was driving with a confidence we hadn't seen all year. The turning point was Mexico. Taking that win and the championship lead seemed to unlock a new level for him. He followed it up with an amazing race in Brazil. While Oscar was getting tangled up in penalties and struggling, Lando drove a perfect race, holding off a charging Max Verstappen to win again. It was a huge statement. He wasn't just winning, he was beating the best in the world to do it. And yet, not as many people were talking about how good he was now compared to how much they talked about his mistakes. The F1 community loves to make fun of drivers when they mess up, but we're not always as loud when they do something great. And as much as it hurts to admit, we have to give credit where credit is due. Because in the same way that Oscar worked on his weaknesses to become a machine in the first half of the season, Lando had fixed his own problems in the second half of the season. This was a career-defining state of driving from the man from Bristol. So Oscar Piastri didn't just collapse in a vacuum. He collapsed while his teammate and fiercest rival suddenly found another gear and became the unstoppable force everyone always thought he could be. It was the perfect storm. This all brought us to the final 2 races of the season. A crazy 3-way title fight between Piastri, Norris, and a suddenly fast again Max Verstappen. For Oscar, this was his last chance to fight back. First, Qatar, a track where he had been great before, and he drove a great race, but it wasn't enough. A bad strategy call by McLaren to not pit under an early safety car ultimately cost him the win. Max Verstappen, showing flashes of his old self, took the victory. Oscar came in a strong second place, while Lando finished 4th. The result was painful. Oscar had beaten his teammate, but with Max winning, the championship went to the final race with all 3 drivers still having a chance. The comeback was on, but now he needed a miracle. It was like needing a royal flush on the last hand of poker, and that brought us to the final race, Abu Dhabi, under the lights for the championship. The math was insane. For Lando, the path was simplest. Finish on the podium and the title was his. For Oscar and Max, it was much harder. The stakes couldn't have been higher. Let's talk about Oscar's performance at Abu Dhabi. Once again, it was brilliant. He qualified 3rd. He drove a perfect race. He did everything he needed to do. But in Formula 1, sometimes your best just isn't enough. Max Verstappen was on another planet that day, winning the race easily. Behind him, Oscar drove a lonely race to 2nd place, a result that in most seasons could have won him a championship. But not this one. because a few seconds down the road, his teammate Lando Norris crossed the line in third. That single point, the difference between second and third, was all he needed. After a season of two halves, after a crazy internal war, after a stunning collapse and a heroic comeback, Lando Norris was the 2025 Formula One World Champion. Oscar Piastri, the man who had led for 15 races, the man who looked unstoppable, had to settle for third in the championship, behind Norris and Verstappen. He had raced brilliantly in those final 2 weekends, but the combination of a missed win in Qatar and Lando's title-sealing podium in Abu Dhabi had closed the door on his dream. For now. So, after all that, we're back to our main question. Why did Oscar Piastri fail to break F1 in 2025? The evidence is clear. It wasn't just one thing, it was a perfect storm. First, the mental blow. The team orders at Monza with a first crack in his armor, and it sent him into a spiral. Second, the mistakes. His terrible weekend in Baku was the result of that mental damage, a total crisis of confidence. And finally, the return of Lando Norris. Oscar didn't just collapse, he collapsed while his teammate suddenly turned into the unstoppable champion everyone thought he could be. He was like Rocky Balboa, but with better hair. So, is this the end of the story? Was 2025 Oscar's only shot, or will he come back stronger, having learned the hardest lesson F1 can teach? That's the real question, and I want to hear your answers in the comments. Is Oscar a one-season wonder, or will this brutal defeat be the thing that finally forges him into a true champion? Let me know what you think, and if you're ready to go even deeper down the F1 rabbit hole, the content gods have already chosen your next video. It's on your screen right now. Go on, click it. You don't want to anger them.